Ladies first.
You can share it with the window here.
It's the best. I'll do my best.
There he is. Look at that. Hi.
Just a little reminder for people who are new here in the house, when you order drinks at lunch or dinner or here in a cafe, please remember to fill out these little forms with your name and what you have to drink and your room number, and pay for that before you leave, preferably. On Sunday.
That was a long time.
Is that somebody's phone or is that the bell of God? Is that the church?
Yes.
So this is just a little hello meeting. Welcome to Kisslegg. Just a little meeting because we've all travelled a long way. Just to say that when you're in here or anywhere, but when you're here, just feel free to move around and go out and have coffee in the meeting. And you can also go to sleep if you want to. I don't blame you either, it's fine. And but don't snore now. This is not a sacred place. As far as this message is concerned, there isn't anywhere that's sacred. There's just what there is. So we're not here to find anything. We're not here to achieve something. We're not here. This meeting doesn't have any idea that there's anything to achieve or understand. There's no agenda here for someone to gain something or get something or realise something. There's no agenda here for somebody to surrender or let go. there's no agenda here for anyone. This is one of the few meetings you'll come to which for the individual seeker is absolutely pointless. There's nothing here for the seeker. This message doesn't feed the needs of the seeker. It doesn't even recognise the reality of the seeker. It comes from a perception that doesn't see that there is a separate individual or a separate seeker, and doesn't also recognise that there's anything to be done. This perception here is that everything is already complete. This is complete. This is already fulfilled. This is wholeness. It always is this. It just is this. There's nothing to do and nowhere to go. This is fulfilled. So the whole idea that comes out of the teaching of becoming, or the whole spiritual seeking thing, the whole idea that there's somewhere to go to, is not recognised here. And of course the basic idea that there is actually someone who can make a choice to move somewhere else, or transform themselves, or let go of something, or meditate, or be still. Any of those things simply don't arise here. All of that whole idea that there is someone who needs to do something is seen as illusory. So what we're doing really together, what can be happening here anyway, is that in some way or other there's a sharing of an illumination. There's an illumination that can arise through the sharing of ideas together. And so please ask any question you like. There isn't anything like a wrong question or anything of that sort. Just ask and say anything you want to, and in some way or other that's just opened and shared. The answer may not be the one you want. And usually, really, if you listen to the answer is actually only pointing back to what is, to simply what is. There's no suggestion from the answer that there's anything to be done or gained or understood from the answer. And also, there's nothing that's prescribed, obviously. There's nothing here prescribed. There is a description, or I would prefer to say what's being communicated here is a suggestion. It's a suggestion of a totally radical possibility, which may be resonated. There may be a resonance for that possibility, or there may not be. It doesn't matter. Whatever happens is whatever happens. So tomorrow morning what I will do is tell the story of me, and then we can go from there, because tonight it feels like we just want to be a bit loose and easy and not get too serious. Well, we can get serious, but just be easy with it, and maybe there's a few questions we can ask. But tomorrow morning there'll be the story of me will be set out, and then we can move on from there and see what happens. And there's unfortunately we're using microphones so that other people can hear what you're asking.
Tony, hello. Yesterday I brought my mother into Earth. She left body in this way last.
You brought your mother into. Sorry.
In the grave.
Oh, in the grave.
Yeah, yeah.
But it wasn't your mother. It was her ashes. Was it?
Sorry.
It wasn't your mother. She wasn't.
That's my
the
question.
body. The body.
The body. Yes. So all this knowledge is available in that mind. But so I thought perhaps it is not necessary to have some emotional things which are emerged. And so I was wondered that some sadness is coming or some, I don't know in English, trauer or so, grief or something in this way. So I feel a little bit disturbed by this because the idea of story, of drama is happening, is going on, or is finishing, or what do you think? What is the reason for that?
What is the reason for?
For the sadness, or to go too much in emotions.
But did you go into emotion?
No,
you didn't.
it arised so
No.
suddenly. So I was also wondered about some tears, or if somebody is a happy cadaver or something this way. So it mirrored me some tears or something.
Right.
Yes, why?
Why what?
Why to suffer by this sadness? What is the reason?
Well, it varies from person to person, but the me can feel a lot of feelings about the loss of someone in their life because they associate their feeling of a me, of me with the relationship with the mother or someone else. The me attaches itself to its friends and its relatives, and when the relative is no longer there, and it feels a loss of something which keeps its identity in place. So when the me simply collapses, then there's nothing there's no longer anything that's related to anyone else. So that sense of loss is not there anymore. There can be a sadness still in that there's now someone that isn't there, but there isn't a sense of that loss which is associated with keeping the me.
There's something of attachment.
Yeah.
Something in this.
There isn't the attachment.
There's some subtle attachment, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, it's quite a powerful attachment. The me is attached to everything that happens to it. When that energy simply is no more, then that attachment isn't there. But still, sadness or anger, any of those things can arise.
Also, I have dreams.
Sorry?
I have dreams also.
Nightmares
also. I got some nightmares after this process. So I
possibly anything can happen, but anything can happen, but it's a no one.
It's a no one at least. So I have to make it sure again.
I know you said that we're never born and we never die. But I was talking to a friend of mine about this, and she said, because you aren't you anymore, because you're everything or nothing.
Well, I'm not everything. There's only everything.
Only everything or nothing. She said it was different. Whereas if somebody like me was to die, I'd still have a lot of personality issues and things like that. And therefore I would reincarnate.
Oh, that's sweet. Has she written that down or guaranteed it?
No, but it made me nervous.
All the time the me is there, then the me believes in its story, and it believes that it was born and it has a life and it will then die. Because the main energy, well, one of the very powerful energies for me is to continue, is to survive. So one of the ways that it devises in order for it to survive after death is by creating the myth of reincarnation. It's another desperate plea that it won't ever stop being there. So after it dies, it will still continue in some other form. The me longs most for its own absence, and it also fears most its own absence. So the thing that the fear of the absence keeps it in the idea that it's alive, and then when it dies, it will then reincarnate into something else. It's a survival. It's a belief in survival. It has no relevance. There isn't anything that's born, or anything that lives, or anything that dies. Therefore, there isn't anything that would reincarnate. Reincarnation is very linked with the idea of time. But the me lives in its own particular reality in which everything seems to be real, including the me. And so, therefore, time also seems real to the me. And therefore, the idea that it's living and it will die also seems real. When me collapses or is no more, it is then absolutely obvious that everything that appears is real and unreal. You can hold it. We won't. It's the speaking stick. Pass the mic.
I was wondering about the idea that everything is already perfect. What about this perfection?
Okay, so we're really sharing together the possibility that there are two realities. There's the natural reality which can't be described and is unknowable. And that is what is longed for. The other reality that is in the me experience is what I call a separate reality. In the separate reality, nothing is perfect. In the separate reality, because there's a sense of being separate, then there's a feeling that there's something missing, there's something lost. Life is not fulfilling because the me doesn't really. The me sees everything as separate, like a tree is a separate object. It lives in the subject-object reality. So everything that it experiences or sees or senses is separate from it, apart from it. And so there's a feeling as though the me is living in a sort of cling film world. The veil of separation is there over everything, and nothing is fully alive. So the me lives really in a sort of deep but subtle dissatisfaction, sense of dissatisfaction, because there's something, it's as though there's something lost or missing. So the idea that this is perfect for the me is completely not acceptable. There's no way that the me in the separate artificial reality of me, there's no way that the me can feel that this is perfect, because it feels there's something wrong with it. That's what the source of all seeking is. The source of all seeking is separation. When suddenly the illusion of me, or the artificial construct of me, is no more, then there isn't anything left but the perfect. There isn't anything left but fulfillment. There isn't anybody that experiences fulfillment. There isn't anybody that knows that this is perfect. There just is what is, and what is complete. It's obvious to no one. To a large extent, that's why this message seeks no change, doesn't recognise there's need to be any change. This is already complete. There isn't someone in it that is separate. There's only an appearance of separation. There's only an energy that feels separate. But that energy that is separate, that contracted energy, is also wholeness. So there's no agenda here, there's no energy here to change anything. That's why there's no prescription, that's why there's no advice, that's why there's nothing is given to do, because this doesn't recognise that there's any need to do anything, because this also doesn't recognise that there's anyone in this room.
I'd like to see if I can articulate.
Sorry?
I'd like to see whether I can articulate a distinction I've been experiencing, which is that. So what you've described is kind of the world of the shift of what's already here, and the world of me, and the contracted energy of the me, and I'm suggesting that within the shift of this being everything and nothing, I can see moments of the personality arising within that, and then and a sense of kind of a narrowing into that dilemma for brief periods of time, and then seem to dissolve of its own accord.
Oh yeah.
And I'll give an example. Just riding up on the train, I suddenly think that maybe I got it wrong, that I'm going to the wrong Kisslegg or something. And it's like, and I'm suddenly like, I'm caught up. Well, what am I going to do if it, and then just something just relaxed back into the peace, just of its own accord. So at least it's been in my experience that and I thought prior, that there's the world of the separate individual and the seeking, and that there's something missing and there's wrong, and then there's this awakening, and it doesn't seem to be the way, anything resembling what I thought.
Oh no, this is nothing like you think. So it seems like the possibility of residue still existing within
within this energetic shift, you know, and really the key is the amazingness of the shift of energy into and what happens as a result of that, and rather than, you know, the concept of what you're talking about, and surprisingly with you know, various, you know, stories coming up, nothing seems to like go back to the way it was.
Well, there is something that we find most people go through, and we did, Claire and I, most people go through what I call an awakening period, where there is a residue of me and not, and me and not. It's like a meing and being energy that goes on for a while, for a long while, or 5 minutes.
Whatever.
And then there is a final apparent collapse. Actually, in the end, well, we could talk about this more tomorrow, but actually nothing happens. There is no such thing as a seeker, a being in being, or a liberation. There's no such thing. But in order to describe it in story form, or there'll be a description of it in story form, but actually there is nothing that happens. But you could say, in a sense, it seems that most people go through an awakening where there's a movement in and out, and then suddenly the whole thing collapses, and there is no residue because there is nothing left. In liberation, there isn't anything left. All that's left is what is apparently happening. There's no one in it. There's nothing, no one that is happening to it. There's just what is happening. And then there is no residue, and there's nothing to come back to because there never was anything there anyway. In a way you could say it's a return to the natural reality in which there is no one. But prior to that, it seems for most, not everyone, we know people that have shifted from being someone to being nothing. But part of that, in the majority of cases, it seems that there is a dancing in and out, a residue.
Do you find in the course of your day, for example, in getting caught up in business or whatever, that there's absolutely no difference in experience with yourself of just sitting?
No, hold on. After, when there is no one, there is no experiencer, and there is nothing there left but what is happening. And the response out of this response now, this voice is not coming out of anyone or any sort of knowledge. It's coming out of no thing. It's just nothing. I mean, that question is also coming out of nothing. It might be going through the filter of an artificial idea that there's someone that's asking it, and somebody that wants an answer. But in the end, when the whole thing collapses, there's nothing left. There's not somebody there that's experiencing anything.
I like to talk about the, domain of nihilism, which is another nothingness.
All right. Yeah. You believe?
Well,
I don't believe.
Shortly after my 15th birthday, I experienced something one night. I called it like falling into an abyss and ending up in Shadowland, so to give it a name.
Yeah.
And it's like all lights went out, life left everything was just tasteless and colorless, and I was wondering, of course, what has happened to me. And after a while I noticed something had taken over. Later on I would say this is the me that has taken over, in which I could not believe. It was an automat. I refer to myself like a mechanical puppet.
Yes, absolutely.
I had no control over it. My thoughts came and went as they pleased. My feelings came and went as they pleased. Everything happened, but it wasn't me. But I was told that this is me. So I didn't have an inner world that was a home, or where I could refer to as me. And the outer world was foreign all of a sudden also.
The outer world
Was also foreign. It was, I didn't have a control, and I don't have a control over the outer world, but also not over the inner world. So I had nothing, neither inside nor outside. And as a result, just to give an example, much later on I once was pregnant and I decided to abort because I could not conceive how someone who is a living dead can give birth to something alive. It didn't make sense to me. So I'm saying this, that can you say something about this? I don't mean just the philosophical term of nihilism, but the experience of nihilism, that the mind sees itself as having is empty, it has no roots, no ground, it's all made up, it's all mechanical, and yet it does not fall into a place where you are, I say.
Well, I'm not anywhere.
Oh, I know, but if you know what I mean. It's like the me doesn't go, but it experiences itself more dead than alive.
Yeah, so really, my feeling, what's coming up for me is that that's very much to do with disassociation. There is something that can happen in the body-mind organism which disassociates with itself and life. And somewhere there's a sort of deadness in that. It's nothing like we're talking about, or this is trying to express here. And there's just a feeling of not being anywhere and having no meeting with anything. As far as control is concerned, that part of it, there is nobody that has any control. That is the illusion that me has. It's an illusion that it's in control. There isn't anything that's in control of anything. There just is what is. But as far as the feeling of deadness or not wanting, not seeing how, not even wanting anything else to be brought into this world that would live in that deadness, for me that's more to do with disassociation than nihilism. I mean, nihilism, as far as I'm concerned, is just another philosophical idea. It doesn't have any great... It's just a construct of the mind. This certainly has nothing to do with anything of that sort, because all that's left when the illusion of separation drops away is unconditional love. There's just unconditional love. Everything is that. Suddenly there's nothing left that's apart from love. There just is living in that unconditional love. And that certainly is not you could say, it's almost like the opposite of disassociation. And it certainly has nothing to do with detachment. What we're talking about here is beyond intimacy.
I do believe me, I do get that. In German we have two words for reality, which we use interchangeably. And I remember I was 18, I wrote an essay about it. These two realities. One is, the reality that the mind makes up, and then the reality that the mind can never enter. And so there's a knowledge, but I fell in between.
Okay.
I have neither nor.
It's difficult to say without really going into it in great detail.
Okay, but
that's what came up for me when you were talking. What suddenly came up for me was that sense. People some people can have the facility to disassociate times in the day or permanently, but that has no relevance to this at all. I don't know how much that satisfies. Well, I'm not here to satisfy you anyway, but I don't know how much that addresses what you're talking about. But this has nothing to do with anything like that.
I'm aware of that. I think I asked for
well, it obviously concerned you because it's affected your whole life.
Yeah.
This is really in a sort of sense what we're doing here, what can happen here, is a sudden remembering of childlikeness. We're remembering what it was like to be a child.
I do, strangely enough, I do have memories before I learned to speak.
No.
And before I entered time, and I didn't know who I was or anything was.
Yeah.
I do have a memory very
Wonder,
clear.
the wonder of this. The
Yeah.
God. And is this not
pebble.
some abstract idea about this? It's actually standing on the floor. Suddenly standing on the floor is really standing on the floor rather than something that is just, apart from it. So it's hugely to do with joy, wonder.
Hi. Right after the subject of nihilism, I'd like to ask something about deconstructing, because it tastes a little bit the same. The mind here, or me, is very addicted, it's seeking, is very addicted to, let's say, deconstructing perception, reality. When I say deconstructing, for example, using, understanding the message, and seemingly, and using, for example, the realization that everything is conceptual, and seeing closer, getting closer and closer to, how can I say it, to the territory, and instead of the map,
Yes, okay.
Seeing that,
I think I get what you're saying.
yeah, the difference between the description and what is
And
trying
what
to
is.
be described. And there's a getting, there's a deconstructing of seeing that all descriptions are made of letters with absolutely no meaning. And sometimes the seeming end result, seeming because even cause and effect gets chucked away, seems to lead to some experience which I can't even talk about. What I'm asking, I think, is about the validity, because this is a seeking of
What
deconstructing.
you're describing is a process.
Yeah, the process, exactly.
So what this is about is that there is no process. However, when the illusion of separation arises, there can be a response that does deconstruct.
Yes.
But of course, there's nobody doing that.
I totally
And
see
the idea
that.
that a me can deconstruct itself is, of course, ridiculous. But what you're pointing to is that, in a way, what can happen here, there are two levels of communication that go on here. One is obviously verbal with idea. So in that sense, deconstruction can also arise out of that, but without any intention at all. And there's no possibility here, no recognition that this can be approached, that you can get closer to this by taking bits off it. Because that's just another process that me is involved in. It's in a way, me can hide behind all sorts of processes.
Oh yeah.
But certainly a response that does come out in terms of sharing concepts together is that there can be a deconstruction that can come out naturally out of nowhere without any intention.
Right.
But the other part of this, which is absolutely beyond words, is energetic. So the words we use here in the sharing together of ideas is at a certain level okay, and it can sort of things can drop away, ideas can drop away. But the most powerful thing of all is energetic, and it's beyond words. So the contracted energy of the me can melt back into the boundless energy. Now that's a description, that's another story. But it gives a sense of the way that this can possibly seem to happen. The strange and awful, the strange thing about it is that once the me has suddenly vanished, when the me suddenly vanished, it's seen that nothing has happened.
Yes. Even as a so-called...
Even deconstruction hasn't happened.
Yeah. But even as a so-called end result, I'm saying so-called because it is seen that there is no cause and effect. But even as an end result of that meditation, of that deconstruction, the me gets away, time gets away, everything falls into a timeless seeming.
Yes, but not through intention. You can't, not through. I mean, you're still describing it in terms of a process.
Yes, a bit.
Yeah, let's go at it another way. Nobody has to come to any of these meetings. You can be down the road at a bus stop, but somebody can come into this meeting or not, and not hear one word of deconstruction or anything else, and suddenly the whole. In fact, that has happened. I know 3 times that's happened that we've heard about, where people sit in the and it's all over, and it just collapses. But without anything, any process going on. Essentially, this is about energy.
Thank you.
can't understand. It was said before when they talked about reincarnation. I can't understand why there is no death and there is no birth. Because an animal is born, an animal dies, a tree grows up, all that process, and a person is born and is dead. Even if the me doesn't exist, this body is born at one moment, born out of the womb of the mother, and then disappears, and then it's something that's...
Okay, so all of that you just described is an appearance. So the tree, the seed in the ground, and the tree growing up, is the appearance of wholeness. Wholeness appears and seems to be a tree growing and having a life and then dying. The whole thing. I mean, this is a miracle. We're talking about great mystery here. The mystery is that in this room right now, there is only no thing appearing to be this. And its appearance is some bodies that seem to have grown up into adults and will die. None of that. There is no reality in that idea. It's just an appearance. So actually, this whole thing is completely timeless. It's the infinite. There is no past. There is no future. All there is what is and isn't. This is what is and isn't. It's not come from anywhere and it's not going anywhere. It is what it is. So we're sharing together in a total mystery. For that which is separate, this can't be understood. What we're sharing together this week can never be understood. There's no possibility of it being understood or comprehended or realized by the me. The me lives in an artificial reality in which there is somebody born, somebody that lives, and somebody that dies. And so for the me, because everything only seems real, and I'll explain this more tomorrow morning when everybody's is more alive, has had a rest. For the me reality, everything is only real. It seems real. Therefore it seems that time is real, the past is real, I'm real, and I'm going to live until then, and then I will really die. That whole appearance, that whole, what for the me seems a real story, is actually only apparent, it's only an appearance. So everything you're looking at the moment is real and unreal. It's the unreal bit that me doesn't get. And therefore can't possibly comprehend that there is no such thing as worth, life. It lives in a story. The me can only exist in a story in time. The story and me are both the same thing. They're not me in the story. Story and me exist together. Take away story, no me. Take away me, no story. So the me can only understand what it thinks it sees. The seed goes in the ground and the tree grows. That appearance is no thing appearing to be something that's happening in time.
Thank you.
Tony, what struck me, whatever struck actually at the time, was that the thought of me didn't even exist.
No.
That it wasn't even just a lie, that the lie didn't even exist.
No.
The profoundness of that was just really like lightning.
Yeah, because that's huge, because me puts so much investment in thought, but separation is not a thought, it's not an idea, it's not a belief, it's energetic. It's an energetically whole thing.
Yeah, I always thought the dream is the idea that I am, and everything that goes with that.
Yeah.
But the dream is still the idea that this is appearing.
Yeah.
That is the dream too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even beyond a sense of self.
Yeah, absolutely. But that it's amazing when that suddenly collapses. I mean, everything here can collapse. This is a place where nothing will be gained and everything could be lost. Oh, nothing. The result is freedom, but it's a freedom that nobody has. It's just the freedom of no thing, being everything.
Can you say about perception? I am perceive life.
You are perceiving life.
For example, no? If you say life is just like appearance, like tree, a seed, and everything, and I'm just perceived, and when I am collapses, so
there's no perception.
No perception.
When you collapse, when me collapse, it doesn't really collapse because it sounds as though it's there like a building and then it just is no more. Then there's no perception, there's no awareness, there's no knowing, there is only unknown, there's only this. And I know to the mind it would seem, well, there must be perception because this wouldn't see. But actually this doesn't see. There isn't anything here that sees that. There's just that. The point, this is so, me is so inbuilt. We grow up, believing absolutely that I'm in here, or something. Even you can even say awareness is in here. There's no awareness within this life. But me, this is aware of something through the eyes of that thing there that looks like a person. So it's so inbred that that's happening. The idea that it's not happening is completely forget it. Don't even try and understand it.
And fear happens only to the me.
No,
Fear.
When there is nothing left, fear can still. When there's nothing left, all that's left is everything. And there's nobody in that everything. There's just everything. And so in everything, obviously anything can arise: anger, sadness, separation seems to arise in everything. In the story of me, so that arises, but it doesn't arise locally anymore. There's nobody that has it. It's all over.
And liberation can taste frightening sometimes.
Well, the idea of liberation to the me is totally frightening because it's about absence, it's death. It's the death of something. But when we have to be careful about this because actually liberation doesn't happen. There's no such thing. But up until the point when all the time the me is there, it's sort of living in something and waiting for something to happen. That's one of its problems, actually. It's waiting for liberation to happen because it never does. But at the point when there is no longer, the me ceases to be, it's recognised that there never was anything happening, and there's no such thing as liberation, and there's no such thing as a person that is liberated. It just is what it is. I forgot what it is.
I had tastes of tastes of that, and I also fear coming up.
Oh, sorry, yeah, it's frightening.
And
totally frightening. It really is. I was frightened. When there was a Tony Parsons saw the face of the impersonal. God, it's really frightening.
But still, I'm all the time looking for it.
Yeah, after longing for it, longing, because somewhere there's a knowing that that's free. That really is the freedom that's longing for. So it's longed for and feared more than anything.
There is nothing to do.
No, well, there's no one and nothing to do.
Tony, if there's no me, who is it? What brings his body-mind system to this place here?
Nobody that came here. Nobody came here, but there might be me sitting here that think they chose to come here. But there is no control over what happens. There's nothing that controls anything that apparently happens. It's just what's happening. And there isn't anything out there that has any intention for this to happen. What's out there, we can talk about this more tomorrow, but all there is energy, and it's completely impersonal and without any direction of any kind. So there isn't something in the sky that thinks, oh, we must have a meeting because then everybody becomes liberated. Forget it. There isn't anything out there that wants anybody to be liberated because what is there and what is here is already complete. So this is just what's happening with no reason or meaning. There's no meaning or reason.
Is it not other body-mind systems and the other body-mind systems? We are all same energy?
There's just body-minds. There's nobody. There's just neurologists sitting. There's just chemistry. That's chemistry. Really. And yet what that's doing, there's nothing that's doing that. It's just chemistry doing that. But what we're talking about here is absolutely beyond that monstrous idea. The awful idea that that's just chemistry and it's like a robot. What we're talking about here is absolutely beyond that as well. It embraces that, but it's far bigger than that idea. It's the imprisonment of being in as a separate me that's the contracted energy, and when that's released, the whole idea of being in control and doing something and making something happen because it has meaning or purpose just collapses. And what's left is life. And when all that's left is life, there doesn't need to be any reason for lifetime. That doesn't need a reason to be there. It just is what it is. It's gorgeous.